Hello everyone, Scott here. Welcome back to the Movie Reviewers 100, a collaboration channel here on YouTube and on Facebook where we review movies based on a particular theme every single week. Could be a particular director, actor, actress, genre, what have you. After some delay, we are wrapping up our Michael J. Fox theme. We actually started it almost 2 weeks ago. We needed a little bit more time, I guess, to put up additional videos for the latter half of the week. James just put up his video a couple days ago on Teen Wolf, and at the start of our theme, Al did a video on the Back to the Future trilogy. And I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about The Frighteners, which was a movie directed by Peter Jackson before he made the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the first Lord of the Rings movie. It was about 5 years in between The Frighteners and The Fellowship of the Ring, maybe a little more. He was actually planning on doing the King Kong remake after The Frighteners, but it didn't end up working out. So he did Lord of the Rings instead, that trilogy, and then he did King Kong and The Lovely Bones, and now he's, of course, on to the Hobbit trilogy. I am not the biggest Peter Jackson fan in the world. I like some of his movies. Some of them I don't like all that much. I find, for the most part, the movies he's adapted from J.R.R. Tolkien's, or is it J.J.R. Tolkien? I think it's J.R.R. Tolkien's writings to be pretty overindulgent. And for that matter, King Kong is pretty overindulgent as well. It seems like every single action scene in King Kong goes on twice as long as it needs to. You know, Jackson had pretty low-budget, humble roots in New Zealand, making horror movies and other weird kind of stuff, and movies that didn't, in my opinion, overstay their welcome. My favorite film of his is Meet the Feebles, which I believe was first released in 1989. It's a twisted Muppet movie. It's very, very funny. And the last time I looked at it, the transfer's pretty bad. I hope they restore it and re-release it at some point, because that would be amazing. It's pretty grainy, and there's lots of flaws, and it's too dark. But it's a terrific movie regardless. The Frighteners falls into the category of movies that I really like from him. I re-rented it about 3 weeks ago in anticipation of this theme. Hadn't seen it in a really long time. I remember I went to see it in the theater, of course, and then caught it a couple times on video after that, but really hadn't seen it in a long time, so there was a lot that I'd sort of forgotten about the specifics of it. Michael J. Fox, of course, is the main character. He plays a guy named Frank Bannister, who is a widower, and he's living in sort of a half-completed house that he was in the middle of building for his wife when she was killed. And since that traumatic incident, he's had contact with the spiritual realm. He can see ghosts as they wander around, tormented in this sort of limbo state. They haven't gone on to the other side, wherever that may be. They are just sort of hanging around. And actually, it's really strange because in this movie, ghosts actually deteriorate over time. They actually decompose. Their parts wear out, and their pieces fall off, like they were actual physical objects. It's a kind of a strange concept. This movie, of course, although shot in New Zealand, takes place in Maine or Massachusetts, Vermont, something like that, somewhere in the northeastern section of the United States. And there's been a series of mysterious deaths in the town where Frank Bannister lives. He makes his living duping people into thinking they've got ghosts hanging around and terrorizing them. And then they pay him to get rid of those ghosts, when in fact the ghosts are actually working with him. He's convinced 2 or 3 of them basically to go to people's houses and pretend to haunt the place, and then he comes in and pretends to get rid of them. And that's how he makes his money. He's a con artist, basically. Even though he can really see ghosts for real, he's duping these people using the ghost to do so. But these deaths are something that he isn't involved in. People just suddenly have heart attacks, and these are healthy people. People with clean arteries and what have you. Yet suddenly, for some reason, they have a heart failure inexplicably. As it turns out, there may be a otherworldly serial killer that's knocking people off. There's the other central character in this movie is Trini Alvarado, who plays a woman whose husband gets killed by this otherworldly serial killer. And while he's trying to help the ghost figure out what happened to him, he ends up having a relationship with her. Trini Alvarado, I haven't really seen very many movies at all. The only other film that I think I've seen her in is the Winona Ryder version of Little Women, which came out a year before the Frighteners did. But there's a lot of other really good actors in it, in particular Jeffrey Combs, who I'm sure many of you know from Reanimator, Stuart Gordon's horror comedy Reanimator. And he's way crazier, despite the fact that he's, you know, one of the more demented characters in Reanimator. He's way crazier in this movie. He plays an FBI agent who's investigating occult incidents, and he really is on edge throughout the whole thing. He's just incredibly jumpy and just acts crazy. So I remember a friend of mine telling me that he's talked with a few people about the film back when it came out, and they really didn't like that guy at all, but we really liked him a lot, just because, number one, he's Jeffrey Combs, and number two, his character was just so out there and crazy. There's a lot of what you could call rudimentary CGI in this film, of course. CGI wasn't, you know, as common then as it is now, although, you know, it was being used quite a lot. Some of the big Oscar-winning effects movies used a lot of CGI, and in this one it's mostly involving taking elements and compositing them into a live-action shot rather than creating CGI characters. There are a couple of those. But for the most part, Peter Jackson took people's faces or bodies or whatever and maybe altered them slightly or augmented them by whatever means, and then put them in the frame with all the regular people and scenery and what have you. Nowadays, you have entire shots made up of CGI or people just walking around in cartoons. It wasn't like that necessarily with this movie, although you can see probably a lot of that in the new Hobbit movies, all that extra CGI. I was reading an article recently about one of the reasons why CGI has gotten so terrible is, number one, it's too expensive for the effects houses to affordably make. They have to underbid their competitors in order to get the job in the first place, and when they do that, they really are putting, you know, making these sequences at a loss. Rhythm and Hughes is an effects house that did the work on Life of Pi with the CGI tiger and the CGI ocean and all the animals and what have you. And they went bankrupt doing that movie, despite the fact that they won an Oscar for it, because they had to take a loss in order to do it well. You know, with the Hobbit movies, there's just so much computer graphics and so many characters that are now completely computer animated, rather than using all that time-consuming latex makeup, and even the costumes are a little bit too elaborate, apparently, to really be. It's not worth the time, I guess. You know, they'd just rather just animate it in the computer. But this is a fun movie. There's lots of really great scenes in it, lots of very striking imagery. It's kind of crazy, and I've forgotten it was actually rated R because a lot of the humor in it is pretty risque. You've got this ghost cowboy back from the Old West who finds a sarcophagus in a museum and ends up humping it. There's this scene where you see the sarcophagus lying on the back and the ghost butt is rising up and down out of the little container, you know, in the you know what's going on there. But anyway, it's a crazy movie. It's fun. It's very inventive, and it's got a good music, good photography. It's a really solid picture. So yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen it. Really glad I got the chance to look at it again. Doing this theme is a good excuse to see something older like that I hadn't seen for a while. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't, please check out the other guys' videos. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Leave us a comment. If you're on Facebook, if you haven't visited our Facebook page, there's a link in the description to that. And you can like our page and leave us ideas for other themes if you want us to see us do something in particular. We should have a new theme starting tomorrow. Let's cross our fingers on that. Don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but we shall see, shan't we? Yes, we shall. Thanks again for watching, guys. Later.